Hi guys, Gnebon here and welcome to the next episode of our survival series. So last time we have completed this witch farm, so we have here a double witch hut setup, and witches are spawning in this witch farms and they are pushed to the nether, and they spend some time over there, and by the magic of portal linking they show up just above our heads and drop almost to their death, so we can grab their stuff with the powers of looting. So this double setup actually drops as much stuff as 5 independent witch huts would do. So let's go down to the storage area, and we have here a little bit of a storage hut. And the issue here is like we have everything is already full and we have to bring our stuff. The problem is that we are still in 1.11.2 and we have to craft all this redstone into blocks, and we know that in 1.12 everything is much easier in terms of crafting, so we have to definitely upgrade our stuff to 1.12. But before we do that, we have a couple of businesses to attend, so I'll snag a little bit of redstone for some future projects and we can meet at spawn. Woof, that was a long way. Definitely we need to find some other way to bring the drops from the witch huts area, because this is way too far away for me. So plan for today, we need to upgrade our world to 1.12, but before we do that, there's a very important business to attend with the parrots. Then the plan is to pacify the nether for the future projects. It's really annoying to work in the nether with gas, blazes and skeletons bothering you. So along the way I'll be presenting a bunch of suggestions for a few small changes to the game. Some of them will be changing game mechanics and some of them will be a little bit aesthetic, and I would want to voice your opinion about them. So I'll try to create a little YouTube poll at the end. I will talk about it and you can also leave your opinions about those changes in the comments, so stay tuned. So the first task is to upgrade, and it's not that straight path but just putting the world in 1.12. So let's just first turn the hostile mobs on. So the issue with 1.12 is they introduce parrots, and parrots in 1.12 they not only don't spawn in existing worlds, they're also not useful and not worthy to farm them, and the only way to get them in the existing worlds is actually to run it on one specific snapshot that's actually really hard to get. So the issue with parrot spawning is when they were first introduced in 17W13a, they spawn pretty much using the same rules as autoload. So they will spawn with hostile mobs, count towards the passive mob cap, but they were also not despawning, and I have all the details about it in the video about parrot explosion. So if we upgrade our world to 17W13a first, we should be able to get them to spawn in our existing jungle. So here's our jungly neck of the woods. So if we go here, so let's have first a little nap. So you can see that I have cleared a substantial area of the forest here to prepare spawning grounds for ocelots, and that's where we primarily will be generating parrots. So we have lots of the spawning spaces, lots of grass, but we can see for now that pretty much there is nothing here. So let us take on, and here I have prepared in the air a little bit of a platform. It's actually more than 120 blocks away from the ground. If I could land properly. Yeah, we've made it. So the thing is, the parrots will be spawning with hostile mobs, and mobs spawn in a cylinder of chunks within 128 blocks away from the player. But hostile mobs that are more than 120 blocks away in a sphere will instantly despawn, but not parrots. So standing here will be generating tons of mobs, because by standing here the mob cap will be pretty much always empty, because of all the hostile mobs will be despawning, and they're despawning very quickly. So now we are running the snapshot and I just logged in. Actually, as we can see, the entity count grows pretty fast and steady, and all of these entities are pretty much only parrots, because this is the only mob that's actually persistent. So it really doesn't take a long time to spawn a lot of them, but we only can do it for a small amount of time before our world crashes from the amounts of parrots, so we have to be careful. So now we are finally 1.12. As I said, I flew around and populated them in other parts of the jungle as well. And in this area I allowed them to spawn about 500 of them. So if you go down here, It's a total parrot madness. And as you can see, there are just a few other mobs, but they're just chilling, harassed despite the constant parrot kofefe. Cute they are, but also useless small little buggers. So let's tame a few of them. And we can now get them on our shoulders. Yep, interesting fact, once they land on your shoulders, they actually stop being entities. If you turn on the bounding boxes, you can see there is no bounding box, they're just becoming part of the player model. So I brought this horse here also for demonstration. But before we get to it, you probably know that there is an annoying bug with portals. That's why I had to build one very wide. Is that when you cross the portal of different sizes, you can end up suffocating in the obsidian. And many people lost their horses this way as well. That's why I built this one so wide, so I was able to safely bring the horse up here from the nether. But if you go to the other way around, as you can see, we can end up in obsidian. It's because the teleporter doesn't account for entities width when spawning them in portals. So I decided this is not the best behavior. However, this can be fixed if we correct the portal position so that it includes the information about entity width as well. So our first change that I actually implemented, if we change this temporal here, we can actually correct it. So if you go back again, we can see that, as you can see, we ended up at the edge of the portal, but not in the obsidian. So it's a little bit simple change, but doesn't allow you to suffocate, which I think is pretty sweet. That's my first suggestion in terms of fixing this bug, because it's pretty annoying. Unfortunately, I tested it with the horses and other entities. They still get, like, if we go through the portal ourselves after they went through, there's a chance we can push them into the obsidian. So the bug with entities pushing into the blocks and fences going through, it's probably related to something else, but at least we can fix the portal glitch. Another suggestion I had was actually about the leaves and leaves texture. You can see that it looks a little bit different than the default, and that's something I've seen in the BWO series he was showing work by Uncle Jam with texture packs. I didn't know you can do that, and show that you can actually make the leaves be more bushy. I really like when I was playing a little bit of Life in the Woods Renaissance. It was a really fun mod pack just for the exploration and for the look of it. Like, it was so immersive, like real game. Like, Minecraft is not that very immersive, to be honest. It's a block game, but this one was actually feeling really nice. And leaves textures, all the dangly bits, was actually part of it, so that's what I did here. So we are here a little bit in the spawn for the demo session. So we have here my work, what I did on the leaves texture. So we have here oak. So I added these dangly bits all around the leaves plus the dangly bits below. And I think it looks pretty nice when it gets into our head as we go along with it. So here's birch. Birch is also much more useful as a leaf in a technical aspect because it doesn't lose the color, for example in the nether. So that's why I added a little bit of less of these dangly bits. Also the birch itself has smaller leaves, so you only have a little bit of it dangling. Here's acacia. Acacia leaves are pretty much the same as oak, but also not that very useful. That's why I added actually a little bit more. Like, if you know acacia have those kind of larger leaves that with like smaller bits. So it actually dangles a little bit more than other ones. It's actually pretty close to what you would feel from an acacia tree. Here's the dark oak. It's very similar to the oak texture. I added a little bit more leaves than the oak because it's supposed to be more fluffy. Here's jungle leaves. I tried to add more of these fruits that are in this texture. And also as a leaf, it's also very dangly and bushy. And at the end we have spruce, which is a little bit different because it has those small needles. So the block itself is quite blocky and cubey, but it has those little bits sticking around in all the edges. So it resembles more and like a spruce leaf. And also spruce is very useful in technical builds and as a leaf because again it doesn't lose color and has a different texture to it. So I thought I'd just spend a little bit of time in Photoshop and generate those 64-bit textures add-ons to the 64-bit faithful. And if you like it, you can use it. Let me know if you like it or if you think it's a little bit too much, but I really like this addition. So back to parrots. The issue with them is once they are on your shoulders, it is almost impossible to keep them here. So we can step up with them, but really we cannot really step down without losing them. Also, if we get them back, come on little buggers. If you, for example, here mount a horse, they're also gone. So it could be pretty useful, but not in this case. It's really hard to keep them. So my suggestion was to make them a little bit more persistent. So let me show you how this might work. So I just need to change this game rule, persistent parrots. And from now on, parrots should be a little bit less eager to get off our shoulders. As you can see, I can mount a horse. It doesn't drop them. And I must say it looks pretty spiffy walking with a horse with the parrots on your shoulders. Also, if you try to take off, flying, it also doesn't dismount them. So how do we get rid of them? So all the vanilla methods that are coded, except for jumping, will work. So like for example, you get into water, they will dismount. Let me get them back. But what I also did code in is what I think makes it even more realistic. If we take damage, and the more damage you take, there's a bigger chance that the parrot will dismount. So, for example, a small drop or suffocation, because we only take a little bit of damage, we'll have a small chance of dropping a parrot, about 5%. And the more beating we take on, the more chance for us to drop them. So let me try, for example, to get airborne, and we try to get 100% of damage, and see if it works. You see, the parrots are out. It worked. So before we get to the Nether pacification, I just want to quickly show you that I kinda finished the passive mob farm. As I showed in the first episode, I finally turned all the portals on and also completed the Nether collection. So let's go through the portal and see what's on the other side. So here the animals will be jetting out here through this portal to the Nether, and we have here two pits with magma blocks. One will make raw products by having mobs die on these magma blocks, and the other is with fire, so it cooks them. We can also add these blocks here, and if you add them here, we also keep the horses upstairs. And if we remove them, horses will also be dropping and cooking. Typically without 30-40 minutes of AFKing, if I have the horse filter on, I'm getting enough horses to lag out the game. Typically I've seen about 200. Otherwise, if I plan to use it only as a meat farm, I just need to open it up and let them cook. Optionally, I can open up these walls and cover these magma blocks, and this way I'll be killing all the animals myself, so this is essentially looting an XP option. But again, I couldn't AFK for more than about 30 minutes with this option without crashing the world, so it is not the best XP farm, but if I'm not in the mood of switching the hostile mob switch, I can just use it and I can get a little bit of XP just for mending a few things, so that works pretty well. So when I filter out anything but horses, I can just open this wall here and the horses should be jetting out of the farm collection area. And in order to quickly sort them, I made a simple contraption that only allows very fast horses to pass through. So we have here two fast horses. This is my previous one that I was using for most of the time, and it happened to have about 82% maximum horse speed. And if you take this one, we can see that it cannot go through the second gate. And here is the fastest so far I have found. This one is about 88%. And he can make it, which is great. So typically out of the 100 horses, I'm getting about one horse that passes this gate. So that's kind of the quick update on the horse situation. So let's go back to the main task. My Nether is due for some essential farms. The gold farm above us broke in 1.9 and I spent most of our gold already to make a few stacks of notch apples. And now I'll be needing tons of gold sometimes in the future. And I also need a new wither skeleton farm because actually I don't have any at this point. And I kind of found the perfect location for it right next to our double witch farm. And for all of that, it would be really useful to have the Nether fully pacified, so we don't have these annoying ghasts, skeletons or blazes bothering us when we are working on the farms here in the Nether. So, in order to have a fully functioning hostile mob switch in the Nether, we need to set up an overworld and Nether supporting contraption. The mob switch would work without it, but if you would pop into the overworld for more than 15 seconds, entire Nether will get unloaded along with the mob switch, and we want to avoid it. And we can do it in a typical iron farm fashion by sending an item to the nether every less than 15 seconds. So typically one would use poppies or even some iron from the stacked iron farms or some other cheap items, for example cobble, but we need an ample supply of them, and the easiest of them are actually eggs. But for that you would need to keep a few dozens of chickens in the spawn chunks, which is not the best idea for the overall performance of the game, because entities are the worst in terms of causing the lag. So that's why I came up with this device. This is a lossless dimension supporting device. There's one over here, and the same one is actually in the nether. The idea is quite simple. If you want to send items through the portal, but you don't want to lose them or get them stuck in the portal frame, you need to either run them through a iced water stream or just need to push them by a slime block. And here I use the second approach because it can be repeated in the nether, because we can't use water in the nether. So we have here a simple hopper collection system that goes into an elevator that shoots an item into the slime block here that pulses with a significant delay. So that's for the item, so it can go on the other side of the block and get aligned with the side of the portal. It's not important here, but if we send items back from the nether to the overworld, we need to align this item pretty much perfectly, not to have portal linking issues and lag spikes of doom. Like typically I've found people just using droppers, dropping items into the portals, but that may cause issues and lag the hell out of your game, so we need to align those items really well. Thankfully the dimension unload timer and portal links expire in the same 15 seconds, so we are not misaligned here, so we just need to care about 15 seconds. After the slime block we have an ice stream exactly for 2 blocks long, and that's actually quite important, as an item shot by a slime block can get too much momentum and some can overshoot the portal and end up on the other side. And I just figured out that adding 2 blocks of ice slow it down a little bit and allows it to align it better, so I have never lost an item with this setup. And you also have to account for a potential fact that an orientation of the portal can actually change. Depending on which portal blocks is used to engage the portal or initialize the portal, an item can either shoot out this way or this way. It will always be on the right hand side of the portal, but the orientation can change. So we need hoppers going around anyway, so we need to catch items either here or there. And as we can cross to the other side, we can see the nether situation is pretty much the same, except that the clock here is much faster here because I don't need to delay on this side. The items just go through as fast as they come in. And that's what I really like about this design, is just you build this device in both dimensions and you never need to worry about dimension loading again or supplying the dropper with extra items. And you can see we can switch this whole device off if we just log this comparator here. And that's in terms of the dimension loading part. The good thing about it is I can be anywhere in the world, in any dimension, or even logged out, and both overworld and the nether will not unload until I stop it. The bad thing is that the world will take some CPU to run all of this, and the other deficiency is the fact that whenever I log back in, I'm due to some mandatory iron crafting, even just with 4 standard 1 village iron farms running here. Okay, so let's go back to the nether. So I forgot to mention this. In the overworld, the item thrower is at the last entity processing chunk of the spawn chunks. And here in the nether portion of this contraption needs to be in the center of a 5x5 grid of chunks loaded in order to have the center one entity processing as well, because you are dealing with items, otherwise the items will be frozen in midair and will not be able to circulate through the system. So that's one thing I forgot to mention about. So the infrastructure for the mob switch is already built in and consists pretty much of a permaloader and the way to load it, and I'll show you how to prime it. So I place it in the -X and -Z axis of the world because I've never ventured here nor have a reason to go there, and as all mob switches based on despawnable entities, if you get too close to them you actually disarm them. So the head of the permaloader is about 400 blocks away from here and stretches from chunk -30 to about -80. So in this control panel we can lock the permaloader, which will disable the switch, or unlock it, which will enable it again. Since the signal I'm sending just using normal repeaters, it's possible that the autosave cycle come within these few seconds and the signal doesn't reach the permaloader because it's getting stuck. So the only thing I need to do is just give this lever a little flick back and forth just to refresh it and try to reactivate it again. The other switch enables chunk loading to the permaloader, which makes it so the mob switch will activate automatically, just by sending item from the overworld, also upon server restart. Otherwise, I just need to come over here and flick it off on and off just from this panel. So this second part is not necessary, but I thought it would be very nice to have in case I'm working on a sensitive project and I don't want mobs to spawn and ruin my day, even my game crashes and I need to restart it. So before we get there, I would like to touch on an important issue connected with permaloading or chunk loading in general, where we load more than 100 chunks at once. It is that in some cases it might be hard or even impossible to have some chunks to unload. And that's not just the issue of permaloading, as I said, but chunk loading on the massive scale in general, whatever technique is used to do so. The problem is that when you have something ticking in a chunk that is not first in the unload list, it may never unload. And there can be many culprits of this ticking. One is obviously hoppers, the ticking stuff that we use actually to do the chunk loading. And if we have some of them unlocked with the items backed in them, they will be ticked every game by the game just to attempt to push the items out of them. This ticking will refresh the chunk, preventing it from unloading. This will happen, for example, if an item is backed up in a hopper trying to store them in a chest of some sort, like in a simple storage system, or in a pipe, or it's also the case with simple item filters. The only way to disable them from ticking is actually to power them, which may not be possible in all situations, but locking your hoppers is actually a very good idea, because among all the methods of reducing their footprint, this is actually the most effective way. Unlocked hoppers simply won't do absolutely anything, so they will contribute to the lag as much as, let's say, furnaces are. Another case, but only applicable to the end dimension, are end gateways, which have also tile entity that ticks every game tick looking for entities inside them to teleport them out. And unfortunately this cannot be disabled, so chunks that contain end gateways, if we do some chunk loading in the end, will be permanently loaded. Now the worst things in the Nether are actually Nether fires. The fire block is the only block that will be ticking totally randomly, scheduling updates every 30 or 40 ticks. So if you have, let's say, about 60 of them in a chunk, it is actually very likely that whenever a chunk is unloaded, it will be actually be force reloaded next chunk because of one fire ticks here. Also, Nether fires, which spawn naturally, can chunk load other chunks if they spawn on the chunk boundary or next to the chunk boundary. And this is actually quite clearly visible if you, for example, load a world in MC Edit. The boundaries of the loaded area in the overworld are pretty much always very smooth because we don't have that much fire. While in the Nether, random fire that spawn naturally cause random loading of chunks around the area, causing these jagged boundaries. And these random ticks scheduled by the fires make sense if you, for example, want to light a tree on fire and want to have it burned quicker than just random ticks allow it. But if the fire is permanent, so either on the netherrack or magma blocks, or when it's in the end on obsidian, I don't think these random scheduled ticks make too much sense in my opinion. So another change I made is to disable the scheduling of these random updates when the fire is permanent. It can still spread, but only through random ticks, which have this nice feature that they will only happen in the vicinity of the player. So Nether fires will not only be not causing chunk loading issues, but it will also reduce significantly their effect on the game performance in the Nether, still being able to spread when they are close to the player. Okay, so let's get to the permaloader. I won't be getting into too much details about it. I already talked kinda more casually how to set it up in the SciCraft survival video, but if we follow this path of hoppers, we'll get to its head. So while we're getting there, I would like to talk a little bit about permaloading, and I know it sounds a little bit profound and serious, but in practice I like to see it as a simple addition allowing us to get some extra effects similar to beacon effects. To set up a beacon we need about 160 iron blocks, and to set up a permaloader we need about 160 hoppers, so it's actually less iron than a beacon. And like a beacon, it can give us some status effects like haste, speed, regeneration, etc. I would want you guys to see the permaloader also as kind of an effect bearer which can be assembled and removed as needed. Obviously it takes a little bit more time to build it than a full beacon because of the spatial requirements of it, but the benefits of the building might be worthwhile. And the effects I'm thinking of is peace, so no mob spawning, and FK ability, so being able to run contraptions without player presence, especially if you happen to play on a server. And when you don't need it anymore, just like beacons, you can just remove it and clean it up. I know the name permaloading sounds very serious and profound, but as I said, I like to see it as two extra status effects that you can give us, peace and FK ability. And as you can notice, I continue with the locking redstone signal past the permaloader head. And in theory, we just need a lock at the head of the permaloader to unload the entire thing. But these freaking nether fires will load the rest of it anyways. So it turned out I needed to go far and wide with locking most of it just to be able to lock and unload the whole thing. And here we are in the chunk about -55 on both axes, and this one is special, and this one contains a blaze spawner. The cool thing about it is it's really close to the diagonal of the world, and we just need one extra hopper just to allow us to load it. Whenever we load the permaloader, it will also load this chunk as well. So if we spawn more than 70 blazes here in this chunk and unload it rapidly, either by going to overworld or by killing ourselves, we should be able to keep them from despawning and be able to load them lazily right away from 0, 0. So now let's fly back. So we are here back in the Nether hub, and actually I didn't make any special tunnel to that spawner, as potentially that one will be our one and only trip required in this direction, and that would be it. So what I did instead is to path out the natural way going through the Nether, using these markers to direct me where to go. It's very similar to the Skizzleman's Compi concept, but this one just for air units. So to see better, I will just add a little bit to the texture pack, which is the brighter Nether, and let's go crack-a-lacking. The reason I made this add-on is for some reason on my computer that I typically play, which is an old Mac, the colors are really dark, to the point that I cannot see anything when I'm in the Nether. The Nether brick is pitch black for me, which is very annoying, so I had to make this one much brighter to be able to even work with it, and even to know where I'm going in the Nether. So we have arrived at the destination, and this is the spawner in question. So let me change back to more vanilla look. And now we can just AFK, typically about 10 to 15 minutes until we get the required number of blazes. Okay, so now I have enough of them, and now we can go to the other side and safely unload them. Crap, we are so far away from home. I forgot about it, and it's dark. Let's sleep out the night and let's see. I don't want to lose these few levels I got already, and I'm low on rockets, so... We need to walk all the way through. I hope you'll stay with me through this path, because it might take a while. The worst thing is the fact that probably my world size probably is gonna get doubled with this trip. But you have to do what you have to do in order not to die or lose these levels. So it was just a Minecraft nightmare. Did I get you? Probably not really. We got back home safe and sound, actually thanks to this device. Some of you may recognize this, my sleep wireless redstone sending device that allowed me to send a wireless message home while sleeping and bring me here. So before we started the previous Nether segment, I went to that hill, I dropped an Nether pearl into this waterfall, which would take about 40 seconds to go to the bottom if you throw it up and 30 seconds if you throw it down, and then went into the Nether. And this way, because this waterfall is actually in the lazy chunk of the spawn, the Ender pearl got actually suspended in the mid-air because it wasn't being processed. So whenever I engage this device actually enabled the 5 hoppers here on the edges, which allow to have this extra chunk entity processing, because now I have all the 24 chunks around and all loaded, which would allow the Ender pearl to actually land. And because I was in the overworld, this actually recalled me to that location. So there's not too much magic about it. So this way we can actually set up more messages with this device. So as we can see in the channel 0, so the one that's on almost entire night, I have the home recall. So whenever I have a ender pearl suspended in the spawn chunks, I can always go back home. So that's actually pretty useful, and we'll be using it to get to the witch huts as well. We also have a signal hooked up to the channel 4, which in this case is connected to our hostile mob switch. So anywhere in the world when we sleep, when the signal from the daylight sensor is exactly 4, we can actually cause the hostile mob switch to trigger. And the channel 1, which is not actually here, it's actually encoded in the witch hut area. So together it's actually quite easy. We just need to wait until we get our signal of 1 on the daylight sensor. You can see it's 2, it's 1. Okay, now we can sleep. You have 5 seconds to drop the ender pearl down. And now we have to just wait 15 seconds. So in that 15 seconds, the ender pearl in the witch huts is gonna drop, and the ender pearl here is gonna be in the middle of the waterfall. So we have another 15 seconds over there to get home. This wait here is not super necessary, but allows us to kind of be lenient about the timing. As you can see, we arrived at the witch hut. So now we can spend our time, pack our stuff, and once we are ready, we just have to wait for the night, because during the night when it's full darkness, that's actually when the home recall is running. So we can actually, whenever we sleep in the full night, we actually be able to recall us back home. So the question you might ask is how it's set up so that we don't have to come here every time we restart the server, because restart happens and it actually unloads the entire world. And that's actually found by a.k.a. example. It's actually a really cool find, is the fact that when you have any villages in the world, if they are saved in the world, when they existed, when the world stopped, they actually are being ticked next time the world starts. So in this case we have this little guy over here in this hut, so we have a village of 1 villager and 1 house, and that's sufficient. And this village here is loading 5x5 area around it, which means that this villager is entity processing and this village can be actually refreshed. And when we restart the game will ping that village and the cycle will continue going through. So that's pretty awesome. But this villager is actually on the side, so this drop here with the waterfall is actually in lazy chunks. So whenever we drop the nether pearl and we detect it, because we have our detector over here, which as we can see is a little bit simplified because we only need to detect 1 signal and code it as 1, not all of them, so we simplify the design a little bit. This actually loads another 5 chunks on the side, which actually makes the chunk with the waterfall entity processing as well, which allows us to drop the pearl. So I've heard a bunch of questions like, why would you need this sleep decoder if you can only use it once every 10 minutes? But for this kind of application, it's actually pretty useful when you need to travel very long distances and send like messages to spawn, like in this case. And you can think about it like if you have plane rides or whatever bus rides, you have to be at a specific time not to miss a bus, and that's a very similar situation here. We have to be every 10 minutes ready if you want to go somewhere, otherwise we can just take our elytra and fly there. So whenever we are ready with all our stuff and it's the middle of the night, we have all the stuff packed up. As we can see, the only thing we have to do is we can sleep pretty much anywhere in the night. Just make sure that the strength of the daylight sensor is 0, so any time in the night should work. And if you just sleep quickly, you have 5 seconds again because there's a little bit delay. Drop a pearl. So after 15 seconds, the pearl should be in the middle of this waterfall, right when the other one in spawn actually hits the ground. So that's it guys for today. I hope you liked the video. We have quite a bit of new stuff and suggestions I was showing today, and I'll try to make a little poll that you can vote for the favorite one. If you have favorite one, if you don't like some of them, just let me know in the comments which one you like, which one you don't like. So in terms of the ideas, we had some game mechanics changes like more persistent parrots, We had calm nether fires. We had a nether portal suffocation fix. I also showed the bushy leaves with dangly bits. You can also vote for them. We had the lossless dimension supporting device, so you can load nether and the overworld without losing items. We have the entire nether pacifier using blazes and permaloading technology. And we had the airborne compass to get from place to place in the nether. And at the end we had a teleporter using the wireless bed sleeping technology. So that's it guys for today. Don't forget to vote in the poll if I managed to set it up. And if you want to discuss any of them, there's a perfect place for it in the comment section below. I'll try to answer to every opinion you have about these changes. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you are new, good to see you again. If you are not new, I am already rambling, I should shut up. And see you in the next one. Bye bye.